Welcome to Bottle Rockets with Alena, your top hockey podcast. Welcome back to Bottle Rocket. Today we have Mave, we have Jerry, and our guest, Mark Nussbaum. Hi, Mark.
Hey guys, so nice to meet you, and thank you so much for having me on.
Pleasure to have you, Mark.
So Stan told me you're the biggest Leaf fan.
No, I
Stan,
said he. No, I said he calls himself. I'd like to know, how he qualifies that because there are millions. So, if he is the biggest, how come? How are you? How come you are the biggest?
So first off, thank you so much again for having me. I really appreciate you guys having me on. Stan Fischler, aka the Maven, is a mentor to me, and he's been so good to me over the last couple of years. And when I was about 11 or 12 years old, and I made my Google account, I decided at that point that my Google name should be biggest Leaf fan, and that was just a cute Google name I came up with. It didn't have any reason behind it. I definitely cared about the Leafs growing up tremendously, and they're etched in the soul, as we would say here in Toronto, as I'm sure Alena can attest to. And from then on, I never changed the name. And some people get a kick out of it and they enjoy it, and some people like Stan question my my fandom, how big it actually is. And it honestly has nothing to do with trying to prove it to anyone. All it has to do with the fact is that I guess it was 11 years old or so, I felt very passionate about my Leafs, and I still very much do. And because of that, I kept the name.
Can I interject something?
Of course.
I read. I read one column by Steve Simmons, and then I watched a guy broadcasting from the ball field, and they both enraged me. Both saying the better team didn't win. What kind of cockeyed thinking, homerism, is that the better team didn't win? You look in the records, and it says that the Los Angeles team won 4 games, and the Toronto team won 3 games. So what is this cockamamie, the better team didn't win? I don't understand it. But the what the Blue Jays did was what a columnist in New York once called a choke. You know what a choke is? Well, that's what your team did. They choked. They could have won it in the 6th game. They didn't. They could have won it in the 7th game. They made blunder after blunder, ending it with a ridiculous double play, hitting into a double play. This is what I call a choke. This is what we called a choke in Brooklyn. Dick Young invented the term, and I defy anybody to tell me that the Blue Jays are the better team. How do you become the better team if you lose 4 games to 3? I don't get it.
Mave. Mave, first off, you're a legend. That's first of all. Let's get that one out of the way. Secondly, I just want to say that the reason why I think Blue Jay fans will, I guess the facts are the facts that one team won 4 games and one team won 3. But at the end of the day, when you outplay the other opponent for most of the series and you're leading for most of the series, and the games that you win are won by more runs than the games that they won, and 2 of the games that they won were in extra innings, and the other game they won was a 2-run game. So the scores were right because they walked us off once in extras in Los Angeles, once in extras in Toronto, and a 3-1 win in Toronto. And the games that we won were by significantly larger margins. Then when you think about that, you're like, maybe they are the better team, and they were the better team for most of the series. But when it counts the most, they just weren't there. They didn't have that championship DNA yet. So I'm not going to disagree with you in terms of the fact that the Dodgers were the better team when it mattered the most. But at the same time, if you were to tell me that the Blue Jays were the better team for most of the series, I would say I definitely agree with that statement. So I'm not saying you're wrong. But what I will say is that when you win 3 games by a total of 4 runs, and the Blue Jays wins were by significantly more than that, then there is definitely an argument to be made that the Blue Jays could have been the better team for a significant amount of the series.
The argument is nonsense. Who cares if you win 9-0 or whether you win 1-0? All those runs that you're telling me that they got, it still didn't amount to the Blue Jays winning 4 games. That's what matters. It's a 9-inning game, so you can get all the cockamamie runs you want in between, and you say, "Well, we should have had this, and we should have had." Your team lost because the team did stupid things, and the stupid things were reflected in the games turning in favor of the Dodgers. Did you see that catch the guy made it with the Dodgers? The two guys bump into each other. That's
Sure
clutch
did.
ball. That's clutch ball. Not being thrown out at the plate, not ending the game with a ridiculous double play. They couldn't even get the ball out of the infield. You're telling me that they're the better team? Not.
Again, Mave, I'm not disagreeing with you. And I did bring up a point that I said the championship DNA. And I would say that when Pajes made that catch to the bottom of the ninth out for Clement, that would be considered a clutch championship DNA effect. But I still don't agree with you that the Dodgers were by far like the better team in the series and the better team won the series. I do not agree with that statement. I will say they were the better team when it mattered most, which ultimately allowed them to win the series because they came in the clutch. But to say they were the better overall team, I very much disagree with you. And it's hard for me to do that because I think so highly of you. But
Do you agree that the Blue Jays choked, as I've been saying several
yes,
times?
I do. Yes, I do.
So that ends the argument. They choked. They didn't come through when they had to come through. They didn't have the best pitcher pitching in the clutch. The best pitcher threw the ball, and they got a double play, and that was the end of it. They couldn't get the ball when they counted. That's what it's all about.
Nothing like the Maven. He's the Maven for a reason.
Well, it never comes down to one play or, or one player. So, overall, you got to say that the Dodgers were that one run better, and when it counted the most, they came through. And my issue is with the Blue Jays bullpen. They really, that was their Achilles heel all year long. The Dodgers bullpen outperformed the Jays bullpen, and the starters, that Yamamoto, man, my God, I have never seen a pitcher like him. He's a machine.
He is. Again, I feel bad to disagree with you. I don't think it was the Dodgers bullpen that outperformed the Blue Jays bullpen. I happen to think that it was the Dodgers starting rotation that came out of the bullpen that outperformed the Blue Jays bullpen because the Dodgers bullpen is actually abysmal. It's terrible. And if you noticed last night, they used two pitchers that were actually in their bullpen, and everyone else were starters. So I would say the Dodgers' investment in their pitching outperformed the Blue Jays pitching at the most crucial times. But Yamamoto is a starting pitcher. Blake Snell's a starting pitcher. Tyler Glasnow's a starting pitcher. So these guys coming out of the bullpen, I don't think it's fair to compare that to the Blue Jays bullpen. Now, at the same time, the Jays had Shane Bieber and Trey Savage and Chris Bassett. So I'm not disagreeing with what you said in the sense of their pitching, but it wasn't their bullpen that did it. It was their starting rotation that carried them. And it's the same starting rotation that carried them to the pennant in the National League, you know?
Oh, Yasevich gave up a home run. Bassett gave up a home run. Hoffman gave up a home run.
I said, I don't think I'm not disagreeing with you on the pitching standpoint. I agree with you. Their pitching outperformed our pitching, but their bullpen was actually worse than our bullpen. It's just that they didn't use their bullpen. They primarily used their starting pitchers. And I do think it was a terrible decision to take out Savage in the bottom of the eighth and let Hoffman try to go for the 4-out save. I think it was a terrible managerial decision to take out Bo Bichette in the bottom of the ninth after his base hit. And I'm not being critical of IKF or Miles Straw, but when you in the most important game of the season to take out your best hitter who was leading the American League in hits until midway through September when he got injured, the first week of September when he got injured, to take him out of the game because he can't run as fast and bring in IKF who is a little bit better on the bases. And then we get to the bottom of the 11th and Vlad who leads off the 11th with a double. And then IKF comes up and he didn't make a bad play. Like he bunted the ball and he advanced Vlad to third. But to think about having Bo Bichette in that spot in a 1-run game compared to Isaiah Kiner Falefa, and to think about having Miles Straw in the 2 spot instead of Nathan Lukes, like these are just decisions that in a game 7, the most important game of the season, with everything on the line, to start making those types of decisions. Again, I'm not trying to point any fingers at anybody, but in my humble and personal opinion, I think those decisions potentially costed us the game.
I guess that means the Dodgers had a better manager.
Their manager, our managers, again, isn't like, again, he's not so experienced. Again, I think he's an excellent manager. He's one of the bright ones in the game. And He's very well can win a manager of the year in baseball, but just some of these decisions you have to learn, and from experience, you learn them. And I think that if John Schneider did it all over again, he'd probably do it a little bit differently. But that's part of life. We make mistakes to get better. And I always tell players and people that in order to win, you gotta learn. You gotta learn to lose in order to win. And I think that Blue Jays team, painfully, and all of us as fans learned that the hard way last night. But I believe this team has great pieces, and with the right offseason and the right moves, can be right back to where we were in a year from now.
Well, by some miracle, they can re-sign Bichette. Yeah, they'll be in good shape, but they have to bolster their bullpen.
Yeah, and our rotation as well is a little bit older, right? Scherzer, Bassett, they're both 37 and 41 respectively. So you're dealing with older pieces that definitely need some tinkering. But I feel very good about our chances of re-signing Bo Bichette. I think he wants to be here. I think he loves the fan base. I think he's the ultimate competitor, right? Playing on one leg in the World Series and moving over to second base for the first time in a few years, and hasn't done it since AAA. Like, that's somebody that really cares to win, and he's playing with his best friend who's come up with through the minors, from the Dunedin Blue Jays to the New Hampshire Fisher Cats to the Buffalo Bisons to the Toronto Blue Jays with his best friend Vlad Guerrero. Like, I don't see it any other way. That 3-run home run, I think, a pen to the paper for me, and I feel very good about our chances of re-signing Bo Bichette.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's a loyal guy, and I think he'll explore the market, but I think for sure he'll give the Blue Jays the right of first refusal. So I think
I believe he's going to stay 100%.
Okay, I'll bet you $5.
Okay,
I got Chiquita, the guard dog, with me today. So
she's adorable.
She's a pit bull.
That's it. What a beauty.
She looked painful.
Yeah, she spreads joy wherever she goes. She just loves everybody.
Adorable.
Well, on a positive side, Leafs won last night. Tanev got Leafs. That's all it talks. Yeah, Tanev got hurt, but Easton Cowan scored his first career goal. That was exciting to see. Did you watch the game, Mark, or did you pay attention to baseball last night?
So I actually reported the game, and I caught some of it this morning. I haven't finished the full game yet, but I know what happened, but I just wanted to watch it through. So I did get to see Cowboys goal, which is really nice. A great play by Tavares, who I know the Maven isn't the biggest fan of, but still a very nice play from a guy who just scored his 500th goal. It was a nice one from the Leafs. This Leafs team is going to get a lot more attention now after the Blue Jays just lost. So we'll see what the coming weeks bring, but we're historically a way better team in November, and we'll see how that goes.
The Leafs are not doing as well as Marner's team, are they?
No, they're not. Vegas is doing way better.
And does that make you think you wish you had Marner back in Toronto?
So, Mave, you know this better than most do. We've discussed this numerous times. I always wanted Mitch Marner to stay. Again, I understand how he left, and I think it's a nightmare scenario for a local boy who grew up playing in the GTHL and the Greater Toronto Hockey League. And unfortunately, the breakup that happened and how dramatic it was, and just the way everything went down from his first big contract negotiation to now. I was somebody that was so excited when we drafted Mitch in 2015, straight out of London, and he was such a talented kid and a local boy, and it really everything added up for him to be an all-time great Leaf. And I still think he was an all-time great Leaf. It's just unfortunate that he went to Vegas, because there was really an opportunity for him to really cement himself as the greatest local kid to ever wear the blue and white and wear the maple leaf. And I definitely understand management's decision in letting him go, because this core four was not working. But at the same time, I was also very well aware that something like this there's a huge reality for something like this to occur, where we struggle to score, where we're really missing a legitimate top six forward. And what made our team special and what made us so successful in our previous, 9 or so regular seasons was that having, a core four, even though, yes, they were making too much money and there was mistakes that were made and stuff like that, but having 4 guys who can score 35, between 25 and 35 goals every year, between Marner and Tavares and Willie with a 40-goal ceiling, and Matthews anywhere from 40 to 69. And you have, 3 or 4 perennial 85-point plus guys, you're going to be a very elite hockey team. And I feel that losing one of those 85, to 100-point guy, Marner was on the higher end of that scale. Tavares being probably the 85, 90 range, and Marner being at the 100, 105 range. Losing those 100 points, it's hard to replicate that. And it's, you can see it on the power play. You can see it in, he's a phenomenal two-way player. And he was obviously very, very, very successful in playing with both Tavares and Matthews. And I feel that it's hurting us a lot. And I don't think Austin Matthews has played up to the level he probably um, envisioned himself playing to at this point as well. But I think losing Mitch Marner, to answer your question, Maeve, is definitely not made us a better hockey team right now. I think we could be, like it could be in the long run, the vision of Brad Living and Craig Berube in the playoffs is we're going to be harder to play against. And we have, four big centers who are two-way players, between Matthews, Tavares, Scotty Lawton, and Nick Waugh. I think that can definitely be a great foursome heading into the playoffs down the middle because those are four excellent two-way centers who are team players and hard to play against. But I think losing, one of the most talented two-way wingers in hockey who is going to put up around 100 points every year and who's, eats up penalty kill power play time and who's arguably, a top three passer in the game who's just like, that's just not going to really make your team any better when you lose something like that. So I think the Leafs are kind of trying to figure out their identity because we were for many years, we were one way, we were skill and scoring and stuff like that. And now we're trying to change into more of a hard nosed, not as sexy version of a hockey team. And I think that it's an adjustment period. And to be quite frank with you, I think there's moves that have to be made in order for it to work. But at the same time, I do see a way of being successful. I just don't know if it's going to be soon. It's going to be a process. And again, I think it hurts the team right now, but it could be Brad Living's vision in the long run is that this can really be beneficial. Now, if you ask me personally, I'm just sad with how everything ended with a local kid and how talented he was and stuff like that. But we'll see what happens.
Well, the Leafs right now, when you said they're looking for an identity, what team, what kind of business is this identity thing? They put on a jersey and you'd have a little, our identity is that we're going to be this and we're going to be that. The identity is to win a hockey game. Can you win a hockey game with the goalies you got? Can you win a Stanley Cup? Can you get to the third round with these goalies? The answer is no. You don't have a good enough goalie. And you had a guy got hurt last night, carried off in a stretcher. How come there isn't a follow up with this? The penalty was a 2-minute penalty, right? 2-minute penalty on that. It's crazy. I don't know what the league is going to do as a follow up on that, but I don't see. I see. And the identity of the Leafs is what it's been since 1967. That's what the identity until they show us different. That's what they have. That's what they have.
Well, the identity is some teams are all offense, some teams are all defense, some teams are a mixture of both. Some are intimidating, some are fast. So that like Philadelphia won 2 Stanley Cups by being, intimidating. Montreal won 4 Stanley Cups by being no fading flowers, but they were more of a skilled speed team. And so, I think the Leafs are with Craig Berube. I think they're trying to get their intimidation factor up and be a little more what they were in St. Louis when they won the cup.
The thing that always impresses me is how labels are put on teams. When I was doing the Devils games, particularly the 95 Stanley Cup winning, the Devils were criticized for playing boring hockey. The criticisms came from Toronto or Canadian writers who were jealous of the Devils, really jealous. But, that's their problem. Point is that the Devils, with all this nonsense about them being boring, they were one of the highest scoring teams in the league. So, the Philadelphia Flyers played tough hockey. They didn't win the Stanley Cup. They won the Stanley Cup because they were tough. They won it because they had a great goalie in Bernie Parent, and they had 20 goal scorers. Everybody talks about Dave Schultz being a tough guy. Dave Schultz had a 20-goal season, for crying out loud. So it was it's more than intimidation. So who's who's so tough now in the league? Who has a tough guy? Probably Columbus does with I think his name is Matthew, a very good fighter, very good fighter. But right now, I look at these teams and I see something that are guaranteed. Going to be guaranteed that the Edmonton Oilers are not going to win the cup. And they don't win the cup with McDavid because McDavid and Draisaitl are easy to take out of a game when it gets to the players. What do they have after that? They have a sieve for a goalie and Skinner, so we take them out. I look at Colorado as a team that I would worry about in terms of being a challenger for the cup. Uh, a very good team right now, and a very good. They're well balanced, and they've beaten the big teams, and that's what impresses me.
I agree with you, Maeve, 100%. Yeah, I mean, when you were talking about the kid on Columbus, you were talking about Matthew Olivier. That kid is one tough guy. He's tough as nails, and he also scores goals. And you referenced Dave the Hammer Schultz, and I think he has similar qualities to that type of player where he can score and he can add a certain element of grit that in today's NHL is, you don't see it too often. And I do agree with you as well that I think, in my opinion, Colorado is the team to beat out west. I think when Florida's healthy, they actually match up best to Florida. Because just down the middle, I think the second line center is the hardest position in the NHL now to find. In terms of bring a positional need, there's so many teams that need centers, and you see it all around the league where some of these teams are just a center away. And I think the Avalanche gave up a big, hefty price for Brock Nelson last year, giving up their top prospect, Cal Ritchie, who's a great player and will be great for a long time on the island. But I do think that Colorado's a team to beat out west. Is just they have a good goalie as well, Blackwood, he's not healthy yet, but even Westwood's great. And having McKinnon, McCarr, and Natchez and Jack Drury down the middle as their 3C, like they're really set. They're well coached. They play hard. They have big players. They're hard to play against, and they can really play every type of way. And I think when you brought up the identity thing, I was like, what do you mean by the Leafs identity? I think the problem with the Leafs is that they're trying to identify as an identity. I think in today's NHL, in order to win a Stanley Cup, you have to be able to play different types of hockey. And I think when you're kind of one dimensional, whether you're a score and skill team or you're a kind of tougher to play against team, more defensively rounded, I think you're putting yourself in a box. And I think what separates the best teams in the league, like Florida, like Vegas, like Colorado, and I would say like even Winnipeg's up there, and I guess Edmonton to an extent, although I do agree with you that I don't think they'll win a Stanley Cup with this core. These teams can play different types of ways and beat you in different types of ways. And I think the issue which has been holding our beloved Leafs back, and yes, Maeve, I know you're a Leaf fan in the 40s, so you can say our beloved Leafs. I think the issue for us is that when we try to play a certain way, we're putting ourselves in a box. And when the Bruins used to beat us every year, it was because they were able to play different types of brands of hockey in order to beat us. And I think our beloved Leafs struggle with the fact that when they choose a way, they choose a way. And they can't beat you in other ways. And I think doubling down on these ways, such as paying 4 players $40+ million, can put you in a box. And I think that is part of the issue with the Leafs, as opposed to teams like Colorado and Florida and Winnipeg and Vegas, among others, who really don't play in that box and they can beat you in different ways. And I think Carolina has a similar issue to the Leafs. That's why they haven't been able to get over the hump. They have a very talented team. Rob Brindamore's an excellent coach. But when you play a certain way and you can't adapt to other styles of hockey, you won't be able to get over the hump in today's NHL.
Toronto, when they won the cup in '48, they had Hall of Fame centers. Who are the centers on the Leafs now?
Austin Matthews, John Tavares.
Tavares doesn't count anymore to me. He's
I know.
Who do you have after Tavares?
Scotty Lawton.
Okay, so that's why you're not going to win any cups. The problem with Carolina is goaltending. It's been goaltending every time they get knocked off, and they haven't solved that. They had one of your goalies. They have him now.
Freddie Anderson.
It's a very interesting race because we see teams now like Pittsburgh very improved and Buffalo very improved, and it's for us in the East. It's and the Islanders too, and the Rangers are now up there playing hockey. They went 3 in a row.
Don't forget about Montreal.
I haven't forgotten that. I was waiting for you to interrupt me, and you did. And thank you very much for reminding me about.
It's amazing.
I'll turn it over to my friend T-Bag. I want to hear something good about the Canucks.
So there's not much good to say. They're really struggling with the injury bug right now. They got 9 players out, including Quinn Hughes and Brock Besser, so 2 of their best players.
Yeah.
That they lost last night in Minnesota and didn't look good doing it. And the players that they bring up are just stopgap players. A third of their team belongs in the AHL. So
Hey, T-Bag, quick question for you. But what about Willie? What about Nylander, that kid, that Swedish defenseman who was a first round pick a couple years back? How's he playing?
Nylander, yeah, he's doing all right. He doesn't look out of place. I don't think he's quite ready for the show yet, but he's holding up well. But yeah, he's just not quite ready for the prime time. So he's got all the tools and the tool chest. So we'll wait at least one more year before I think he's ready.
Okay.
Another team that you have to think about is the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah.
They just re-signed Markstrom. He's a pretty good goalie. They've got a very good backup goalie, and they've got a lot of very, very good forwards. The Hughes kid, Jack Hughes, is a wonderful hockey player if he doesn't get hurt. Because you see, the whole thing with the Canucks is very disturbing to me, because I don't know what the figures are, but it seems that these players are getting hurt more now. I mean, how many guys are out? 6, 7?
9.
9. That's incredible. There's something wrong if we're going into the second month of the season, just beginning, and they got 9 players out. I mean, it's illogical. It doesn't make sense. But yet it's happening, and that tells me that there's a problem. Too many injuries.
Nylander got hurt a few games ago, right? And is currently listed as a day-to-day.
Yeah, Willie's day to day.
Do you think he's gonna be back within the next few games, or?
Yeah, I think Willie will be back. I'm very nervous about Tanev because he just came back from that concussion. That made me a little nervous, but I think Willie will be back. I think we'll be back shortly. I'm not too worried about Will. He's going to play tomorrow night potentially, but Maven touched on something very interesting. Pittsburgh is off to a crazy start with their new coach, Dan Muse. But I will say that my team to watch out for is Utah. Utah is built really well. I don't think they're going to win the Stanley Cup, but I think they're going to make the playoffs this year. I think that line of Paterka, Cooley, and Gunther is just lethal. I think Keller has arrived 2 years ago, but people are only starting to notice him now. And Sean Durzee's an excellent defenseman, and Sergeyev's an excellent defenseman, and their coach, Andre Turgeny's an excellent coach. And they just have some really good pieces. And I could see them just, keep on surprising people and turning heads throughout the season. I don't think this is really, such a surprise to me personally, but I think a lot of people were kind of shocked to see them roll out of the gates like this. But I think Utah's built a wagon, and they're arriving now, and they still have so many kids coming up that are so good. So they're going to be a fun team to watch for sure over the season and really beyond this season.
What I want to know is whether the injury to Tanev was dirty. Was that a dirty play?
I don't think so. I don't think it was so intentional, in my opinion. I haven't watched it enough. Obviously last night was a busy night in Toronto sports, but in my humble opinion, from what I've seen so far, it doesn't look to be too dirty to me. I love Chris Tanev. He's one of my favorite Leafs. He plays hard and soul hockey, and if we had more of that, I think it can definitely translate to a more successful team. But I don't think it was a dirty play.
The guy got a penalty, right?
He got a penalty, but I don't think it was dirty. I don't think it was dirty.
We'll see what the war room says about it, if they say anything.
Tanev, if he got carried off of the ice, it's serious, because that guy is a warrior. We had him for 10 years here in Vancouver, and we didn't appreciate him enough. I mean, a lot of people slagged him a lot of the time, and it was just but that guy, he gives it 100%, 100% of the time. I mean, he does not hold back, and he is a great teammate.
I agree with you. I think he's a huge reason why Quinn Hughes blossomed into the defenseman he is now. Tanev is so good with those type of young kids and allowing them to play their game and showing them how to play a pro game, because that's what he plays. And I agree with you. I think it was just an awkward fall. And I think that he just fell back from a concussion. I think it was a combination of both those things that just made this so bad. And I do agree with you, T-Bag, 100% that if Chris Tano's getting structured off, it's definitely not, something that's not serious because that man is as tough as he gets and he's literally a warrior. That was the perfect definition.
Well, I hope he didn't break the one tooth he has left.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know if it was so. Please, hopefully, we're sending prayers to him and his family, and he's an excellent player.
Well, the good news is that it wasn't as serious as it looked. He was tested in Pennsylvania and is flying back to Toronto with the Leafs, so that's a great sign. That was the latest update, anyways. What about Wall? He was out for quite a while, but he's back training with the team now. Do you think we'll see him in the net soon?
Yeah, I think Wellesley will be back. I think it's going to be good. I think Stolie can use a little bit of a break. He's been playing a lot of games, and similar to Tanev, he's got that. He's the type of player that just puts it all out there, game in, game out. So I think Wellesley will be back soon. I think he was, as a personal leave of absence. We're glad that everything's okay. He's able to be back with the team, and I expect him, starting a game in the next week or so. I think he's amping it up. He's got full participation in practice now, so I think we should be good to go with Wellesley shortly.
What do you think the deal is with Caden Primo? I mean, a few years ago with Montreal, he was one of the highest prospects in the league, and now he seems to have just fallen off the map.
Yeah, so that's an excellent question, T-Bag. I think that I'm a big fan when teams take players and players that were highly touted before, because clearly there is talent there. It's just a matter of the right coaching developing, and sometimes these players just get rushed too early, or sometimes they're just unfortunately put in the wrong situation that doesn't allow them to reach their so-called potential. So I think bringing in a guy like Caden Primo can be definitely helpful. I think in today's day and age, similar to the Maven was saying earlier, when teams are just searching for identities and playing different ways. I think in today's NHL, it's socially accepted to carry three goalies on your active roster just because, goalies aren't playing 60 games anymore. It's just not a reality. So I actually like the move. I think it's a low risk, high reward type of move. Again, not going to guarantee that he pans out, but we know, like you're saying, that he was a highly touted prospect and there's definitely some talent there.
You look at the records when the original six was in its prime, a goalie like Glenn Hall plays every single game of the season without a mask. Gump Worsley maybe missed 2 games for the Rangers, which was a bad team. And now you've got so many crazy goalie injuries, and part of it might be the fact that the NHL is not cracking down enough about players bumping into goalies or not bumping into goalies. But the bottom line for me is that what every single one of these guys is taught now, which is the butterfly, is going to be the dumbest style of goaltending. And which is, of course, when you're a stand-up goalie, you don't have to worry about what these guys are doing every minute. They're going down in the V, and the V, and the V, and the V, and it affects them down below. And I think that's another reason why teams now have to have a 3-goalie system. You got 2 guys, and then you got a third one, whoever he might be on the roster.
Dave, so first of all, thank you for representing the original 6. Tom Worsley, he was obviously a little after that, but still he's one of the shorter goalies of all time, but was super talented, and obviously Glenn Hall and so on and so forth. But I will tell you like this. What's interesting about your point is that, Marc-Andre Fleury really kind of brought the butterfly in, and back then even when he kind of implemented in the league, is he was one of the first butterfly goalies. Like your point's an excellent point, but then my question to you is that why did Marc-Andre Fleury play so many games? Martin Brodeur, who played butterfly, play so many games. So many of these goalies who did take on the butterfly stretch, but they were still successful as of 10, 15 years ago. And now it's all but gone, right? That concept of playing 50, 60 games, right? Goalies now, a starting goalie can play 45 games, and that's totally acceptable as long as he's ready to go in the playoffs. And even in the playoffs now, you have backup goalies that are playing left and right. So it's very interesting. So my question to you is like, your point is valid, but why then did it take so long for the butterfly to kind of get implemented? Goalies were still playing a bunch of games, but now suddenly goalies are suddenly only playing 40 games, 45 games.
The butterfly was taught, or is being taught, in virtually all the goalie schools. And technically, or superficially, it looks like it's smart, but it's not because they're down all the time and everybody's shooting up in what they call the toy department, a Butch Goring, a Butch Goring line. My point is that you take a guy like Marty Brodeur. Marty Brodeur was the ideal team guy, unlike some of the others. And Marty Brodeur could have commanded much, much more money than he was getting, but he took a discount because he knew it would help Lou Lamoriello to get more guys. And that was a very generous thing for Marty to do. And the other thing is that Marty was he was a hybrid. That's what they described it, a hybrid goalie. Played the different ways that it, whatever way it was needed, this is what he did. But he certainly was not a butterfly goalie by any stretch of the imagination. And he was in perfect shape, and he wanted to play. He was not crying about I got to rest, I got to rest. But he wanted to play every single game that he could because he loved it. He loved it. That was the way it was with Glenn Hall, except Glenn Hall, in those days they weren't getting paid much, so this was a living. This was a living. But Marty to me was the perfect team player. Perfect team player, and he basically played his entire career just for one short stint Blues with the Devils, and won 3 cups. Won 3 cups.
Yeah, I agree with you that Marty Brodeur was not a butterfly goalie. He did butterfly at times, but he was more of a stand-up goalie. I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about unbreakable records, and the number one unbreakable record that they came up with was Glenn Hall's 600 starts consecutive. So they said that that's the one record that will never ever ever be broken.
Yeah, that
He used to say goaltending is hell, but he also loved it. And he also was very prideful. And those guys in those days before agents and stuff like that, it was a matter of pride to play every single game that they could and also play while hurt. These guys played while and but we're in a different era. So
yeah, but maybe I agree with you 100%.
I say when Glenn won the cup in 1961, you imagine, I think I had I had an old car then, but imagine you bought a car in 1961. Let's say you bought a Cadillac in 1961. That Cadillac is totally different than the Cadillac of today because the game has changed in every single way. It's changed. The only thing that's the same is the puck. Puck is the same. Sticks are different. Skates are different. These guys in the off season, they go to Adam Oates to teach them how to play hockey again. I mean, it's a whole different thing. Just 180% different.
100%, Mave. I agree with you. And it's crazy that again, this generation is just so different because you have kids, everything's, besides technology and all that stuff, like Phil Esposito always used to say that in the summers, him and his brother Tony would go back, they go sit in the cottage and smoke cigars and drink beers. And as they got ready for, the Summit Series in '72, they were not in shape. They didn't take the Russians seriously. And they just wanted to have a good time and have exhibition games. And then they got blown out and realized that you see the Russians trained the whole summer and we're sitting in Muskoka drinking beers and fishing, which is great. But there's 2 ways to be an athlete. And I think that kind of changed the landscape for NHL players. And but Maeve, I did want to ask you one question actually. In your opinion, who is the greatest goalie to ever play the game?
You cannot just to pick a goalie of all time because you look at the goalies that played in 1928, different equipment. You go to the original 6. Nobody wore a mask until that fateful game in 1959. How can you compare these? I would like to know which guys who are playing goal today would have the guts to play a game without a mask, let alone let alone so the answer to your question is you cannot pick a single goalie. You have to pick it by eras. You pick them from the 20s to the 30s, and then when you get to when Torchuk came along in the 50s, and you had Hall, you had Roger Crozier, different stuff. So if you want to pick, if you want to know who my favorite goalie was, I'll tell you. My favorite goalie after Glenn Hall was Al Rollins.
Okay.
No, do you know who Al Rollins played for?
He was a New York Rover goalie, wasn't he?
He was with the Rovers in 42. Al Rollins was the guy who won the Vezina with Turk Broder when the Leafs won the Cup in 1951. And that's, Broder had gotten older, and they
He played.
split.
Yeah, he
And
won. No, he was. Al
Rollins
Rollins
won the
played.
Hart. Can you believe this? Rollins won the Hart Trophy with the Blackhawks when he finished last. How about that? I think it was 64. You can check it.
Yeah,
And
no.
so, my favorite goalies were Broder, obviously, for the Leafs, 5 cups, and Rollins when he came along, and, Glenn Hall. Today, I'd be hard-pressed to pick one.
And Bobby Jones saw Jack Nicklaus play golf once, and he said, "He is playing a game with which I am unfamiliar." I feel the same way about goalies because they play a style that I never knew, and I was a hybrid goalie, and but these guys who play on their knees all the time, and that's what they're taught at all the goalie schools, and it's because they want to play the percentages. It's harder to score a goal up top than it is down low. And so they want to cover the bottom of the net and use their hand speed with whatever they have to cover the top corners. And so, it's you become less of a goalie and more of a shot blocker, and
Right.
Totally.
and so
100%.
that I'm just playing the percentages. And so, I have a hard time with it when somebody scores from the goal line, and puts it in off the goalie's head. And guys can pick that spot now. So,
They know it.
if he had just stood up, he wouldn't have scored that goal. So,
In the game against the Rangers, Stoller's mask fell off, but he still made the save and kept going.
Yeah, so that's a great point because that was the only. I was going to tell the Maven that the only guy that might have a chance at playing without a mask is Anthony Stollards because when his mask fell off, he made the save with his blocker. So maybe Stolie can play for a shift in the 50s. But when Al Rollins won the Hart Trophy in 54 for the Hawks, I don't think anybody was thinking about goalie masks and what design would be on their mask. I think hockey was a little bit of a different game.
If I had to pick one goalie to win one game to save my life, that goalie would be Dominik Hasek.
Good choice.
It's a good choice.
I'd pick Tretiak. Not Sachuk, but Tretiak. He never played in the NHL, but I really wish he did.
Well, I saw Sawchuk when he was with the Bruins after he had that mononucleosis that sent him back after he was traded by Detroit because they had Glenn Hall coming in. And I saw Sergei Sawchuk at the Garden against he was with the Bruins against the Rangers. And he got one goal. Orville Tessier had a great wrist shot. He got a goal for the Bruins. And I swear the rink was like tilted. I mean, Stochek, that to me was as great a game of goaltending as I ever saw. And the Bruins won 1-0 on Stochek. Now, every once in a while, looking for the Rangers is able to do something like that, win a game by himself.
Mave, if you had to pick one goalie, whose would yours be?
My one goalie?
Yeah, to win a game.
I said I love Glenn Hall because he did it for 502 straight games, not counting the playoff. Plus he was a personal friend, and he gave me my favorite interview question answer when they won the cup in '61. I was with them in the hotel suite. They were in Detroit when they won. They couldn't get out because of a blizzard, believe it or not. And I went over to him. He was standing alone in the corner with a beer in his hand. And I was so excited because I was rooting for them. I loved Glenn. And I went over. I said, Glenn, the first Stanley Cup for the Blackhawks since 1938. And your first Stanley Cup. How do you feel about it? And he looks at me and he said 2 words. I'm enthused. That was Glenn Boyle.
Yeah, I actually,
All he needed was 2 words to say it all.
yeah, I actually played golf with a guy who was friends with Glenn Hall, and he had his goalie equipment displayed in his house, and so the guy asked him about it. How did you practice against Bobby Hull all those times? And he said, well, several hurt.
Yeah, that makes sense. That sounds about right.
What about you, Mark? Who would you pick as the goalie?
So one of the things I'm only 22, so I'm really a young kid, but I guess like I am as the Mave knows, I do have history of the game, and from what I understand, if I had to pick one goalie for one game, like I'm gonna go a little bit off the rails here, just because I don't want to pick anybody that you guys picked. Well, the truth, and I don't want to pick Patrick Roy because he was a Hab, and as somebody who grew up a diehard Leaf fan, I just can't justify myself saying that. But if I had to pick one goalie to win one game, I think it'd be Terry Sawchuk.
I would say on second opinion, Kenny Dryden.
Yeah, the problem is he's a Hab for me.
He had the greatest attitude. Greatest attitude.
Who's your pick, Alena?
Oh, I said Tretiak.
Yeah,
Good
Lance
Tretiak.
Tretiak. Yeah, I love that.
Let's go with NHL goalies. If you had to pick an NHL.
I don't know. I really like Stollards. I just love our goalie. I mean, there are a lot of great ones out there, but yeah, I like Stolie. And he's from New Jersey, right? So Mave likes him too.
Yeah.
That's a homer pick if I ever heard one.
Isn't he? He comes from Edison, New Jersey, home of Thomas Edison.
There you go.
I wanted to give him a light bulb for a gift.
That's only the Maven can, baby.
What
That's
a
only
great
the Maven can.
He's the #1 goalie for the Maple Leafs from Edison, New Jersey.
What are the odds, eh?
What does that tell you? That hockey's become America's game.
Matthews is from Arizona, isn't he?
Yes,
He
he
sure
is.
is. Scottsdale.
Matthew Nyes as well.
Yeah, Arizona, we gotta build an arena and have an NHL team there. I know the NHL would love to go back there.
Yeah, the NHL is going to go back there. In fact, it's funny you mentioned Arizona because the Coyotes were I loved them quietly out west, and they were growing up. I just again, I was a Leaf fan in the heart, but if I had a team that I was always keeping an eye on, it was the Coyotes, and I love Shane Doan, and Shane Doan's now with the Leafs. He's actually the assistant GM to Brad Living. It's interesting. So, you have Matthew Nyes. He's a Scottsdale kid who a buddy of mine actually grew up playing with Matthew Nyes for the junior Coyotes. And then Austin Matthews is obviously Scottsdale. And you had, the Coyotes legend himself, Shane Doan. And in fact, Shane's wife just started a Coyotes. They started a whole bringing the NHL back to Arizona team. They put one together out there with Tom Galvin, one of the local politicians. And Shane Doan's wife, they put together a committee, and they're going to try to get a team back there. And I do believe they will. I really do. His wife's name is Andrea Doan. Tom Galvin, Craig Morgan out there is very involved. I'm not sure, maybe if you remember him, he killed the Coyotes. He's an excellent man. He's a friend of mine. And they will get a team back there. You just have to find the right owner who's willing to invest in it, build a beautiful arena in the right spot where they can attract both, from the Valley and from Scottsdale, from Phoenix, and be able to attract the right, fan base and not be outside of, kind of like the Senators are in Canada and they're not in downtown proper. I think Coyotes would like to build a rink that makes sense and is easy and accessible for fans. And the second that happens, I believe Gary Bettman will definitely take the NHL's talents right back to Arizona. Because when you have guys like Austin Matthews and Matthew Nyes and Arizona State University's hockey team, ASU out there with Coach Greg Towers, I think there's just a lot of good things going on. I think there's a lot of players that have settled down there after the careers. I think there's the minor hockey there is just booming. And it's only a matter of the right investment at the right time in the right place. And from there, I believe hockey will thrive in Arizona.
So, Mark, what do you think the chances are of hockey coming back to Quebec City?
Not a chance.
Yeah, I agree with you, Maven. I wish there was a better chance. I know the Videotron Center it's a nice new state of the art arena. I just, like the Maven just said, in 3 words, I don't think there's a big chance. I think the NHL solely, the NHL is right to do this. I think it's the NHL. It's priority number one would be, I not in a particular order, but priority 1, 2, and 3 would be Arizona, Houston, like these types of places, are just get another team in Texas. Such a big state with such potential for hockey, and Atlanta is building a new arena now, and Portland's always in the mix. Again, you have places all over, and I just think that population, money, potential, the states just they win all those battles, unfortunately. So I wish Quebec City had a better chance. I just in my opinion, I don't see it as such a such a big opportunity, unfortunately.
The problem is that the NHL is not interested in sentimentality. They're interested in the money, and there's not enough. There's not enough corporate money in Quebec. There is in Arizona. There is in Houston and Atlanta as well. And you have to have the big bucks. They were faked out by the guy in Phoenix. They thought he was reliable, and it didn't work. It worked, but they'd like to go. They'd like to go back there, and
Yeah, they will. Maybe I believe they will. I believe they will for sure.
My problem with Atlanta is they've had a team twice, and it's failed both times. And I know there's lots of corporate money there. I mean, Coca-Cola, CNN, they're all based there. And
TNT, just remember, and so and I agree with you, also, T. Like it's true, but just remember that now with the new TNT TV deal, they're based out of there too. So there is, and also Georgia's just not to try to segue into college hockey talk, although I think college hockey is really great for the game, but you have to remember Georgia's built the new arena. They're going to be bringing an NCAA Division I hockey team. So like it is, and I agree with you. The NHL has tried twice, and that's why to me I understand the frustration of fans out in Quebec City when it comes to this topic, because why should Atlanta get a third shot when we live and breathe hockey, we have a new arena also. But similar to what the Mave's saying, it's where the money is and the potential is, and that's what the league cares about, and that's unfortunately the reality. It's it's a business, and I just don't see, and I see just because TNT's there now also, and you said other big business hubs, like it just gives them an opportunity to have another shot, especially with the brand new state of the art arena that they intend to build.
the thing is now that the league is flourishing, made more money now than it ever has. The commissioner has done a phenomenal job, and when you consider how he holds the record as being a sport commissioner, so
Yeah.
they're not in any hurry to make anybody happy by adding another team or two. It'll happen if if they think it's the right time. But now you got a nice situation, a lot of nice rivalries. The teams proving that weren't. San Jose has found themselves. Anaheim has found themselves, and by the way, then there's no way they're going to go into Portland ever. I happen to know the Portland situation. My oldest son lives there. Portland is not going to be. And one of the reasons why, when there was a chance, the basketball team, the NBA team, didn't want any competition, and that was it. Simple as that. It's also a pretty small town.
It's already extremely difficult to win the Stanley Cup with 32 teams. Imagine if they added more.
Well, the fact that 27 teams are looking for a second line center, I mean, it's even going to dilute the player pool even more. So,
Exactly. So well said. No, that's that second line center thing. I was about to say that. T, you took the words out of my mouth. Like you have so many teams looking for a second line center, and if you're going to bring in 2 more teams into the NHL, and you already have teams that are struggling with second line, the 2Cs, hardest position to find in the league now. It's going to be crazy. I don't know. Like you're saying, I don't know what's going to be. That's crazy.
You mentioned Matthew Nice. What do you think of him? I think he's one of the best players so far on Leafs this year.
Matthew Nice, yeah. So he's very unique player. Um, he's the Leafs have not had a player like him in many years. He reminds me of Darcy Tucker in a way, just a physical specimen, and he plays the game the right way. And he's also extremely talented, who can score. I think he can score 30, 35 goals. I love him. I think he's a huge part as to why the Mitch Marner decision ultimately happened, because they felt that he could pick up some of the slack when it comes to goals and just points. But I think he's a real, there's not many players like him in the league. He's built different. He's 6'3", 220. He's so young. He's so talented. He's so hardworking. He's so driven. I think he's a rarity in today's day and age. And I think USA Hockey wouldn't make a mistake by not having him on their Olympic roster.
If you could only pick one, would you pick Willie or Nicey?
That's a very good question. I think the quick answer would be Willie, just because he's probably more talented. But like, if you need to win a playoff game, I have to get back to you on that in a minute. Let me think about that one. You got me there.
We got Nice for a very good price as well.
Sure did. 7.75. Yeah, excellent deal.
And he's not even at his best yet. He's getting better every year. So I think
Totally.
in the long run, he's going to be maybe even better than Nylander.
Totally agreed. Totally agreed. Well, I don't know if he'll be better than Nylander, but I don't know. I don't know about that, but he's definitely going to be better.
Do you know what Markstrom signed for?
Yeah, 2 years, six a year. He's making 2 years, $12 million.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because when he signed with Calgary, 6 years, $36 million, I thought Calgary was going to hate that contract, and it turned out to be one of the biggest bargains ever.
Yeah. Yeah, he's been great, and he's also 35, so it's just a good deal, like good term, like 2 years, like gives him a little bit more security, another nice couple of paychecks for him too. And he's a good goalie who's worked really hard, so we appreciate these type of guys, right?
Yeah, like when we had him in Vancouver, yeah, he was phenomenal, and
Yeah, he's excellent goalie.
but with Shesterkin making 11.2, I think is what he gets. I mean, he's got to be seeing dollar signs in their eyes.
Absolutely agreed. He's just Alena, back to your point. Like, I don't think not like it's hard. I think if I needed to pick a player for the long run, I'd still pick Nylander. But I think Nyes brings an element to like a playoff series that Nylander doesn't bring. But at the same time, Willie is so clutch, and he shows up in big games better than Matthews or Marner. Like, he's always been there more. So I think if I had to pick one player for my team to start, I would pick Willie. But I don't, but I think it's close. I don't think it's something that's I don't think it's something that you're just, oh yeah, for sure, Willie. I can see how it goes both ways. But I don't think Matthew Knies at his best is better than William Nylander as a player overall. I think he brings elements that Willie doesn't have, but I think the overall game and the way Willie contributes. But again, I do understand. I understand. It's a tough argument because Knies is just a different specimen that the NHL just doesn't make every day. He's so unique. He's so special.
I think the Leafs are missing the physicality in their game right now. Nice brings that physical aspect, but I think we're still a bit soft in certain situations. We need a little bit more toughness. All right, anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap up. Mave, do you have a joke for us?
These two guys are walking down in Manhattan on Madison Avenue with their dogs, and one says to the other, he says, Charlie, why don't we go get something to eat? He says, we can't get something to eat because they wouldn't let us in with the dog. He says, no, listen, watch me. And he goes into a pharmacy, comes out with two old cheap canes, and a pair of sunglasses. Watch what I do. And he walks into this restaurant. The maitre d' says, no dogs allowed here. And the guy taps his cane, his fake cane, and he says, man, this is my seeing eye dog. Maitre d' says, when is a Doberman Pinscher a seeing eye dog? He says, no, they're very tame and they're good. So the maitre d' takes him to the seat. And 2 minutes later, the other guy comes in. Maitre d' says, no dogs allowed here. He says, no, this is my seeing eye dog. And he's really good. His seeing eye dog, he says, wait, the maitre d' says, since when is a Chihuahua a seeing eye dog? And the guy taps his cane and he says, you mean they sold me a Chihuahua?
That's great, man.
All right.
That's amazing.
I got to go.
That's it.
All right. See you, Mave.
Maeve, we'll see you soon, Maeve.
Thank you so much, everyone. Mark, Mave, Jerry, and to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to Bottle Rocket. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Until next week, take care.